Rob Akeshoek is Senior IT Management DevOps Architect at DXC and co-chair of the IT for IT forum within the Open Group. He helps IT organizations to transform to become a lean and agile service provider, ready to manage the new digital ecosystem consisting of a hybrid cloud and multi-vendor sourcing landscape. He's architecting the new IT organization, combining standards, practices, and concepts such as the IT for IT standard, TOGAF, SAFe, Agile, Scrum, SRE, and so on. He assists in IT organizations in their IT automation journey, covering the entire IT value chain, including portfolio management, the DevOps tool chain, test management, monitoring, and event management, risk and security management, ITSM, and so on. Rob is author of numerous articles and author of the IT for IT Management Guide. And it's my pleasure to have Rob with us in this new episode of our Value Stream podcast. Let's start. Hi, Rob. How are you today?
Hi, David. I'm doing very well, I must say. The sun is shining outside. There's a little bit of hard wind, but it's actually nice. Blue sky, so should not complain.
Thank you very much for having accepted my invitation. It's really my pleasure and an honor for me that you accepted that and that you are here with me today. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's also an honor to be at your podcast, so it's great. Nice, David. Thanks.
Okay, so as you know, this podcast is named Value Stream. So we will talk about value. We will talk about value derived from the services we operate, about digital products. But of course, first, I will talk about IT for IT because many of our listeners or people who watch this podcast know you thanks to your, I would say, real engagement in IT for IT, for instance. So can you just shortly describe what IT for IT is?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so IT for IT, we call it the IT for IT standard, is a kind of a reference model. How do you run a modern digital organization? So it really looks at all the capabilities you need from an end-to-end perspective to deliver value to the customer, but also reduce risk, manage compliance, manage your cost and finance of IT, all the things together. And it's really about how do you integrate all the different parts, let's say all the capabilities into a more integrated digital delivery model. So it's really about a data-driven approach to IT, provide insight, traceability for continuous improvement. So that's a key element, data-driven, getting a common information model to manage IT, take better decisions. The other aspect is also related to automate a lot of these IT management activities. It's part of that framework. What kind of automation building blocks you need from your design, build, test, deploy, and monitoring, and those kind of components. But it's really about how do you integrate all those components together to create optimal end-to-end workflows or value streams, basically.
Oh,
and
yes.
and organizations can use IT for IT as a kind of a reference model and look, okay, where am I in this? If they plot their own situation to the reference model, they can use it as a kind of diagnostic tool. They see, okay, what do I need to improve? What are things that I should do to improve my digital management capability? So it provides guidance as a kind of as is state, plot your target state to it, and then you can create it as a transformation journey to improve IT management.
Oh, thank you for that. That's a very detailed answer. I do not expect anything else from you, by the way. So what you said that it is the standard. So it means that there are who take part of it, who take part of the different version of IT for IT, how it works, in fact.
Yeah, so IT for IT is maintained by the Open Group, which is an organization that is it's non-profit. So the idea is that different companies work together in the Open Group to develop these and maintain these standards. So the Open Group as a whole has about 900 companies participating in it. So there are multiple standards like TOGAF for enterprise architecture. A lot of people know that. Archimate for enterprise architecture modeling. But also there's a security forum looking at security best practices. Like nowadays, zero trust is a key one, and risk management, IT for IT. But there's also the Unix standard is also maintained by the open group. So there are different forums within the open group. And the different parties participate in that. And in this case, within IT for IT, there are like software vendors participating, consultancy organizations, and training organizations. Many, very broad range of people involved in this to enhance the IT for IT standard and get their ideas in, and that's really nice because it's you learn about how other organizations have fixed this, and then it needs to be it's captured in this standard so that it can be reused as a reference architecture for other organizations.
So it's a bit like an ISO organization specialized in one specific field. Could you define it like that?
No, I would not call it like an ISO organization, but it is like more like an open as an open group. The idea is to indeed develop standards as ISO. It also has the same idea, of course, to improve capabilities. The focus is indeed mainly on IT or digital, like architecture, security, IT for IT. But there's also other areas like how do you for data management and things like that. But it has a scope, but it can be extended because if the member parties would think that we need to extend it to other areas, then and like there is also a specific for oil and gas. There's a separate forums with different industries, like Shell is participating in that. So that, but you could say the focus is really on defining standards related to IT in general. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned in what you said about IT for IT, the key word for me, value stream. And I know that in IT for IT, there are 7 value streams described. Why did you need in IT for IT to describe value stream? Why 7 value streams? Can you tell me more about that? I'm very interested about this.
Yeah, so IT for IT introduced the value streams from the early start when IT for IT was introduced over 8 years ago. So it was one of the first that really looked at, okay, I need to optimize end-to-end processes and connect them all together. So let's say a lot of time, not today even, most organizations have different processes to manage their IT. And it could be like, development, design, your build and test and monitoring instant problem change, risk, compliance, portfolio management, and you can continue. But it's really about how do you connect all these processes together to create value for the customer. And that's why IT for IT tries to understand what building blocks do I need, but how to connect the building blocks so I can create flow in my organization, reduce waste, and improve my basically lead time, but at the same time embed security, risk, compliance into it. So it's not just about value in the sense of outcome for the business, but also reduce risk, which is also value. Mm-hmm. And basically about what kind of work streams or flows do you need in your organization to become successful within a digital delivery as a viewpoint. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why 7? Well, maybe we started off with 4 value streams, by the way, in IT for IT. And if people talk about in this industry we're in, if somebody talks about value streams, 90% of the time it's about a development value stream, right? It's really about a new feature, new story, get it into production. That's where most people talk about value stream. So value stream management is typically associated with that kind of development value stream, getting a new feature into production and make sure that that works. I guess that's just one of the value streams, right? Because once something is in production, then you need to be able to support the customers and the consumers. Like somebody has a request. So we look at what are the key triggers that and creates flow in the organization. So as we mentioned, a new demand idea and get it into production is one. But the other could be I have a service request for my catalog needs to be fulfilled. So I want to have access to a service and in it like a subscription. So that's more like the consume value stream. You subscribe to a service and then you get access to it, and then we monitor the usage and maybe turn it off, the license used if you don't need it. So, but later on, maybe we can go through all these value streams. But you could say the key triggers are, there is a demand or a trigger like a new feature that needs to be implemented, or there's a service request, or we have an incident or a security vulnerability. And of course, part of the whole thing is also how do we continuously improve? Like how do we explore and evaluate my current portfolio and determine where do I need to invest? And that's where most organizations, by the way, are not very good in. So in the past, we call that strategy to portfolio. That's still an area in IT for IT. It's basically translating your strategy into the right portfolio of your products, services, and change. And that's really about managing and optimizing the portfolio as a whole. And in IT for IT, it as part of the evaluate value stream. So evaluate basically, let's say your your organization have 200 or 400 different applications, call them products. How do you evaluate how well these products perform from a security, risk, and compliance perspective, and then take the right decisions? Maybe decommission things or change the way we organize ourselves. So optimizing the portfolio, that's also a value stream, right? Because it's not easy to evaluate your portfolio, take the right decisions, migrate to the cloud, decommission things, simplify, improve customer journeys, those kind of flows we're talking about.
Yes, and I think that you touch a very important point on that. When you were talking about this portfolio of application, that's also a consequence of this, I would say, of this, product-oriented view on
Yes.
application, meaning that we really work in an incremental and iterative way, with a very low challenge about what the product owner say, for instance. And at the end of the day, we create like plastic bags in the oceans. We create a lot of applications, in fact, that are not really used or difficult to maintain. We don't really ask the question. So and then you have the new CIO coming with some inheritance from the past about applications, and for them it's a nightmare to rationalize this portfolio. So just that fact for you is a matter of value stream, for instance, this particular thing.
Yeah, this particular thing, you could say there are two things you touched upon. One is you have an application and it's continuously evolving over time by the product owner, adding new features and so on and so on.
Yes.
So it becomes more complex. But then maybe there's still technology depth for that specific application over time. So there are two things that in strategy to portfolio fits. Is to evaluate value stream is really about how do I assess my current portfolio of products and services? Are they still on track in the sense of value, cost, risk, and compliance? Maybe user experience as well, of course, and then say, okay, because typically a individual product owner doesn't really think about his or her product that way, because it's like with Christmas and the turkey, right? So but there's somebody accountable in the organization to look at a specific portfolio. Typically, we do that in IT for IT also from a business value stream perspective. Let's say we have a value stream like hire to retire, which is a business value stream. And then we look, okay, what are the digital products, applications that support the business value stream? And then we try to optimize the value stream and look at all the individual products. Are they still, having the right value, compliance and risk? And then take decisions. Where do we want to move to? Like also architecture blueprints. Like what does my architecture roadmap look like? So you create a kind of roadmaps of where my product needs and my portfolio of products need to move into. Now, what I think the most problematic thing within most organizations is that we move from project to product thinking, right? That's at least what we state. We want to move from project more to an agile delivery model, and we have like quarterly QBRs and there's quarterly business reviews, and that's typically how organizations have been set up nowadays. At least they try. So they try not to use projects anymore, and now we call it an epic. But actually, we didn't move to product thinking. We just moved from project to epic thinking. We're still moving to the old way of working. We said we don't do projects, but now we have epics. But they actually it's the same, but just manage work. And what we still didn't do is mapping, and you can test it yourself in your own organization. If you want a list of all the epics in my organization, is it mapped to a product or a service? It's not. It's just a list of epics in a backlog, and there's not linked to my product portfolio. So, and that's where we still have the major issue here. We have, let's say, and think about products for, let's say, 400 applications you have. You have 400 applications. Can you now, with one, button, a quick click, and say, give me all my applications which have not a project to it or an epic, or what epics do impact my application portfolio? There's a mismatch between basically mapping your epics to your products. Most organizations don't have it at all. Even out of the box portfolio management tools like portfolio backlog tools, they call it an epic, but actually in the tool itself, they are project. They're called project. And if you go to Jira or Azure DevOps, everything is still called a project. But I think the key challenge is that we still don't manage our product portfolio and the roadmaps and the changes from that perspective. We again start with a demand, put it into a backlog, epics, features, stories. Where is the product? Yeah, we don't see the product. So how can you map value if you don't link all the work to your product?
Yeah, that's interesting point. So it
yeah.
means that if we would reverse that, for instance, what about also proposing more things related to the product that already exist instead of waiting for demands? Is it something that you see in organizations? Because this is a proactive approach on that.
Yeah, and that's good that you mentioned it, David, because that's indeed the transition we need to do. If you are responsible for a portfolio or a business product, you continuously evaluate how well does it work, what do I need to improve. You don't wait for demands coming in. Of course, ad hoc demands will still come in, could be changes in regulatory requirements that you have not foreseen or strategic change from the business. But you have to start with your current portfolio of products and then say what needs to be improved, like continuous improvement, but then on even a higher scale, not just individual products, but now the combination of products and the interdependencies. Because nowadays, if you think about a customer journey from the business perspective, that is dependent on multiple products integrated together with multiple teams working together. So you need to understand your business process down to the applications and the involved teams, and then say, okay, what do I need to improve? And that cannot be done by just raising new epics or new initiatives. So, and you can test it yourself in your own organization. If people are listening or watching, where are all my products defined in my organization? So is there a single definitive list of all my applications and products in a single repository? That needs to be there. And a product owner. So that's one. So do we have the products and the product owners? I think 80% of companies don't have that. Some people believe they have it, but it's not there. A single list of all the products you have with a product owner defined. But products don't live in isolation. They are part of a team structure. So we need to understand where does the product belongs to, like which portfolio of business function. That's step one. And people don't have that. There's 80% of organizations don't have that. The second is, do we know which teams do we have that are associated with these products? So a team, basically a catalog of teams. So we talk about a catalog of products, the catalog of teams. Also, we don't have that. And then the third one we need to link is all the epics and changes initiatives that we have and map those to those three: the product, the teams, and the changes. Or they call it epics. And the change list we still have, like people have a portfolio backlog, often even in Excel, right, by the way, or a portfolio backlog, but they're not linked to the right teams, not linked to the right products. As a result, we still have problems to translate strategy to execution, because it's very difficult to determine the right priorities of all these changes if you don't see how the change contributes to value to the customer. Value to the customer is not contributed by work in an epic. It's contributed by a digital product or a service or an application that actually supports a business process. So you need to take a product perspective here.
That's very interesting view, and I think it's something that we didn't hear yet in this podcast. So I really thank you for that.
And it's funny that So think about scaling Agile Framework, SAFe, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good example where they also miss that element. So SAFe is really about, it's not DevOps model, it's a development model, right? How do you get, it's not talk about ops and monitoring, and it's really about development. But what also is missing there really is the product view. So they move from a value stream capability to a team. And product, yeah, they have about the solution, but the solution is not the same per se as a product, because the solution is in their content more like maybe a collection of products and application. But the product driven approach is lacking there as well. And that's why it's so important to think about your own digital journey and think about, if I, nowadays we call it lean portfolio management, right? Or strategic portfolio management. And IT for IT tries to define, what do I need to have a strategic portfolio? So it's enterprise architecture. It's your, basically as a key component, understanding your current and target business model mainly, and how does that evolve over time. Think about your customer journeys, business processes, and business capabilities. Your product portfolio, what are the products and services that supports that? And then your portfolio backlog. So what are the initiatives that I need to do? So those three are the key ones, right? Your portfolio of change, your product portfolio, and your enterprise architecture. You connect those three together, and you have miracles in your organization. And today, most people have not connected those three. Enterprise architecture, and I talk about data linking as well, right? Linking a business capability to your product, to your epic, those three, for example. Today, in any organization that I know of, have three different systems to manage that. An enterprise architecture system where you maintain, maybe with a bit of luck, you even have a business process model there and your business capabilities. Maybe they have an application portfolio in the CMDB somewhere, bad quality of data, and then we have our portfolio backlog, but they're not connected. So I think if we can connect those components, capabilities together, you will see what you can. This amazing what you can do there. And I can give you an example for at Shell. When I was working at Shell, we had a similar challenge. Now Shell has a product portfolio. They had about 8,000 products. And we talk about IT products, right? Business applications, things like that. 8,000, and they had about 3 billion spent of IT, and half of that was project related. We call it project, but change epics, and they were not linked to each other. So the epics and projects were not linked to the applications. And when I said, let's link those together, and the CIO said, okay, it looks like a nice idea, but check with the PMO. And in the past, everybody had a PMO, project management office, like they have all the project and program managers. Most organizations have still something like that. The PMO, of course, didn't want this because they said, additional administration. Do you want me? The project manager, of course, knows that this project affects these two applications. They know it. So why do you want to capture that in a system? It's overhead, stupid, not nice. And I said, well, this is part of lean and traceability. If you do something, you know what you're changing. And if you don't link it, you create you don't have the transparency, traceability, and as a result, this results into friction, waste, because people don't understand what projects there are out there and what is my impact. So, but they didn't want to link it. But the CIO said, no, let's do it. It's a good idea. So we linked those two together. It's additional work, right? But it's part of the work that the project manager should do. You cannot imagine the business impact it has. It was like millions of investment. Now we could trace back into, hey, we invest in the wrong applications. We have millions in applications that were targeted for decommissioning, or we have investment in new features for applications that were not well performing in production. The other way around, the business now has suddenly transparency. What all the new applications are, or all the projects we're doing, because a business cannot go through 300 different projects and understand what did the project even do. Now they have their business process picture and see, okay, we have these 10 projects that affect your business process. And now they could see it. They could visualize suddenly. They have insight in all the strategic change, because a simple project was just linked to a product, and suddenly it became transparent, traceable. But also, we suddenly had improved decision making on where to invest. Better investment, better business outcome, and it was amazing. And it also created traceability of value realization, because now suddenly when a project was finished or an epic, we set it in production, the project manager said, we got our benefits. No, you didn't got your benefit yet. Now we're going to start monitoring the benefits based on what you have delivered through the product. And we could monitor, hey, the cost didn't go down. You said you're going to migrate to the cloud and the cost will go down. Now we see the cost go up. And now we could compare. And there was like suddenly the value realization was also measurable. Now, you cannot imagine that a single data link in an organization from a project or an epic to an application result in that massive impact. And so we talk about here linking things together that creates impact.
Yeah.
And
that's very nice. And that was also I had another question to you, but you partially answered that. Is you mentioned that, for instance, in the open group, you have different standards, IT for IT, but you mentioned also Archimate and TOGAF, so which are related to architecture. And you mentioned the enterprise architecture as a key component in value management. So could you a little bit more elaborate, because it's something that is quite new for many people. People like thinking in this not silo mode. I don't think I don't want to misuse the word silo, but you know what I mean. So what is the real contribution of an enterprise architect or of enterprise architecture in value management?
I think you can translate it into 3 levels, right? We have the enterprise level, and that's the enterprise architect. We have it on the domain level, call it the portfolio level, domain architect, and then on the product level, the solution architect. So those 3 levels. Now, the solution architect, of course, on the product level, makes sure that the application that is delivered is architected the right way to get the resilience in place, security, risk compliance. Make sure that is just, and it's not that simple, right? An application needs to have the integrations with maybe other applications. So, what integration platform should we use? So, take the right architectural decisions. But the product owner is always accountable, right? It's not that remains the same. But that solution architect works with the domain architect within a domain, so to understand the cross dependencies between applications and connectivities across value streams in the business, which a product owner doesn't always understand, right? So on the domain level, we have maybe 20 applications, and then the domain architect, together with the chief product owner for the domain, can identify, okay, where do we moving what is our target state? We are here now, what we need to improve. So it becomes more like different stakeholders on the domain level, the architect, the business process specialist, and the product owners. Those 3 work together and say, okay, what do we need to do to improve? Not just a single application or system, but the collaborative understanding the business process as a whole. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think it's closely related to what just talked about. If your enterprise architecture function is not mature in your organization or architecture, then the risk is that your portfolio of services becomes, fragmented, and they starting to work. We don't create good standards, and as a result of technology standards, we are reinventing the wheel all the time. We miss guidance of how end-to-end processes should be improved, because that's also an architecture function, right? Understanding the end-to-end processes and how can we better support it by the right. So where are the gaps and issues, and what is our target state? And of course, architecture is not a single discipline. We have also architects like for security architects, data, like a data architect, looking at the data and data privacy related to the data model in our organization. So they call it the data fabric. So we have different people that look after typically things that underpinning all products. So data is typically not just sitting in one application. It's typically a lot of shared data, master data, and that's where you have a data architect. Now, of course, a lot of problems occurred in the past that we didn't have a good architecture practices. And as a result, the people that were executing were also not very successful. And that's where architecture got to blame, right? They got to blame that they were delaying things or defining things that were not even possible yet, and so that's a learning that we need to have. If you have the right people in place with the right architectural guidance with TOGAF, you can make a success. But yeah, if that is missing and the governance is missing in the organization, that will fail.
That's good. Related to what you said, so I understand that, for instance, one of the critical success factor for, let's say, the use of value stream, or generally speaking, for the value realization, is this connection. Okay, you describe, this all these demands related to the portfolio or of products. Okay, this is one important thing. Another thing you said is also to relate this portfolio with the different, let's say, activities of business processes.
Yes.
When I think about what you say, I said to myself, wow, it means that one of the critical success factor is to document all that stuff.
Document.
It should be huge. For instance, when you said about, you give this example with Shell, is it just in that case something that only huge organizations can afford?
No, I think that's a very good question, David. Well, I think it's the other way around. Small organizations cannot afford not to have this, and that's the problem with large organizations with a lot of people. They can afford some mistakes, but it's typically the smaller, or let's say mid-sized organizations, that cannot survive if they don't have this in place, because they cannot afford all these fancy mistakes or new technologies that break down, and investment in blockchain that eventually doesn't bring any value, right? As an example, maybe stupid example, but what's really, I think, is a mid-sized organization needs to be a little bit more clever, because they don't have the resources, they don't have the ability to attract all those skilled people across the world. What they can do, and they have the skills in house, they at least understand a bit of their own business, I hope, right? Because and the only thing you need to do is create a business capability model that says, okay, this is what my business looks like. These are my customer journeys. These are the processes I have. And the weird thing is, most organizations still don't have this very well documented. And the problem is because they ask an architect to document it. So it's put in an architecture tool, but that's not how it should be, right? There should be a process owner feel accountable. The architect is not accountable. It's the product owner, the process owner. Maybe there's a person responsible for customer experience. Those persons should feel accountable to maintain it together with the different stakeholders, so that there is visibility of, okay, this is what my process looks like. These are my applications linked to it, and these are the teams involved. It's not that complicated, right? But it requires discipline, that it's part of your work also to do this. And I'm still struggling to understand why do organizations don't have this, right? Often it's because they are fragmented in business units, and each business unit have their own lists of processes. So that's one challenge, the fragmentation of organizations. So I think it is a distributed task. Don't understand me wrong. It's not a central thing, but at least there needs to be a kind of top-down vision from the organization that we should have this in place. It's the same as if I go to an IT organization and say, "Do you have a process model for your entire organization?" They say, they don't have it. They have a list of processes from ISO version 3 still, right? That's not a process model. That's a list of things you do. But apparently, we still not ready or commit to ourselves to have that in place. Okay. But once you have it, you will be amazed. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that. And related to that, my last question to you will be, okay, so you mentioned, and I think you related to the book of Mike Kesten, from project to product. He called him project to product.
Well, it's actually project to epic, right? They didn't go from project to product.
And now what is your forecast for value management in the next years? Can we really move, and how, from product to value?
We're still far away from that, right? Because value is still something that's very intangible for most people. What is the value? And so it becomes very vague. And what is more like, what you at least understand is your product or your service. That is more specific, right? And the features around that. But I think definitely that is what we need to do. Although I still believe that product focus is good, because that's the product, but then you understand what is the product vision. So for each product, there should be a clear vision, and that links to your business value and outcome. So maybe that's the first step. Understand the purpose of this product, part of the bigger, let's say, business goals. So at least you see, okay, what is the contribution for my product to the business? And then you can start defining some metrics where you can say, then I can have some value metrics around that. So if I improve my product, let's say user experience, and we get more sales out of it, oh, that's value. But you still need to think, step one is linking your product to the business model and the outcome. So you can see, oh yeah, this is how my product contributes. And then I can put some metrics in place. How do I measure that? And what are my strategic goals? Like the business has some goal. And then you can better also prioritize the work you need to do to enhance the product.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that. I think it's really one of the a good direction to go, and I hope that people who listen to us or watch us will take a lot of very insight from what you've just said. I mean, for me, this episode was very good in a way that I learned a lot. That's also the reason why I'm doing that, by the way. Because I learn a lot.
Yeah. No, to be honest, I learn also about questions there, right? You think about, oh yeah, that's so it's actually, you learn a lot. That's a reason why I also like to participate in the open group. You also learn by documenting things that you already know, and then you even improve your knowledge by just talking about it, presenting about it. It improves the way so you learn yourself by talking about it.
Yeah. So we are nearly now at the end of this podcast. So Rob, you are very famous. You are like a star. You even sing about the flow.
Yeah, I sing about flow indeed.
What is the best way for our listeners or audience to reach you? How can we contact you if we want to know more about the main things you said today, for instance?
Via LinkedIn, it's always nice to connect. So please connect and we can chat through LinkedIn. That's all good. I think a good way is just watch my YouTube channel with some videos that might provide some interest and basic understanding what we talked about today. And but feel free to contact me with questions, ideas, also like feedback, and always liking to talk to you as well, David. So
thank you. Okay, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure. I really enjoyed that. A lot of very insight today. Thank you for that, Rob. And I wish you all the best for the next years in IT for IT and in all the other initiatives you start.
Thank you, David. Nice to be here and appreciate it. And I wish everyone a good digital journey, improving their value streams and outcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.